Hi, my name is Ashok. Welcome to Question the Foundation. This will be a video series aimed at attempting to understand the foundations of society. An attempt that tries to question every aspect of society and see if well-being is the starting point, which aspects of society stands up to scrutiny and which doesn't. In this video, we are going to take a look at art of lying. Specifically, the lies with respect to job creation. In the society that we live in, there are many people who call themselves job creators. They say we are investing our capital, we are creating infrastructure, we are creating industry, and from the industry we give jobs to other people, meaning they are the givers, which means on the flip side you have the takers. So you have employees who are the job takers, you have the employers who are the job givers. This myth has been so widespread across the world, not just in India, across the world, that most of the people accept that myth without any question. So in this video, we're going to take a look at that myth and see whether how these so-called employers are able to pass themselves as somebody who does some favor to the society rather than using the society as a marketplace to extract wealth for themselves. Okay, so that's the kind of rough theme of the video. Before we proceed further, I came across a saying that goes something like this: the best lies stay close to the truth. Meaning, any lies can be on a spectrum. Some lies are so obvious that anytime the Prime Minister of India comes onto TV and says something, you know he's going to lie. That's a given. But there are lies that are so sophisticated that it is very difficult to distinguish them. How can you make it indistinguishable? You mix a lie with the truth. Once you mix a lie with the truth, for the person who receives that package of lies combined with truth, it is very difficult for him to actually decode which part of that package is a lie, which part of that package is truth. So with that background in mind, I'll give a quick outline of what will be covered in this video. So first we are going to debunk this myth that there are people called job creators. At least the people who currently claim that they are the job creators are not in reality job creators. That is claim number one. And the claim number two, assuming that society has accepted that lie as truth, then what are the consequences of those lies in the society that we live in? So those are the two aspects that we are going to cover. So then the consequence of lies is an interesting thing in this perspective, because few days back, last week, an incident happened in Karnataka where an industrial lobby group wrote a letter to Chief Minister of Karnataka and something happened there. And the interesting thing is not what happened. That anyway happens, meaning here we are talking about the industry group writing a letter to Karnataka saying, you please remove one bureaucrat from his position. And government of Karnataka, like any sane government, would immediately stop doing that, because they are going to apply their mind and see whether the man is following the law or not. No, that never happens in India. Yeah. If a powerful man writes to a politician, the deed would be done. So this bureaucrat is terminated immediately, not terminated, rather he is removed from that position, and later he is assigned to some animal husbandry or some department, which means it's a punishment position for that bureaucrat. Okay, but the interesting thing is not even that. That is kind of a given. Everyone knows that this is what will happen. But the interesting bit is they wrote a letter to the government of Karnataka, to the chief minister of Karnataka, and that letter is a gold mine of what will happen, the kind of entitlements people will get as soon as everyone starts believing that they are doing some favor to the society at large. Okay, we'll be going over that later. That is kind of gold mine. Okay, first thing, job creation. Okay, so when somebody says I am creating a job, I am an industrialist or I am an entrepreneur, I am creating jobs, on the surface it feels like yes, the man is kind of has invested some capital and he started some business. Now he is kind of employing few people, which means he is paying them the salary, which means obviously he is a job creator, right? So that's what the common perception is. But in reality that is not true at all. That is not true at all for the simple reason. Let me show you a couple of okay, so this is the propaganda model that we are all sold. So you have an employer and you have a bunch of employees under him. So the employer right now claims that he is the job provider / job giver, and which means if I am a giver, you automatically becomes the taker. So when you have when you split things along these lines, I am the giver and you are the taker, you have to be grateful to me because I am giving you the job. So that's the propaganda model that is perceived. This is kind of what happens when you're only shown part of the picture. When I show you just part of the picture, it is easy for me to actually come to the wrong conclusion by showing only part of the picture. Let me show the full picture. What is the reality? This is the reality. So you have an employer and an employee. They are all working. They are doing their job, meaning they are putting the effort, and there is a deal between the employer and the employee that if you work, I'm going to pay you this much, or I'm going to give you this much, whatever that means. Yeah. And the reality is employer is not the actual job creator, because all the employers and employees are consumers of either this employer's product or some other employer's product. So say you are working for a biscuit factory. You're the employee who's working for a biscuit factory, and there is an employer who owns right now that factory that produces biscuits. Who is the actual job creator? Is employer the job creator, or all the employees who are working in that organization and vast majority of workers across the country who go to a shop and buy that product? Is the consumer or the customer the job creator, or the employer? Is the factory going to give you a job if nobody buys the product? If all these workers stop buying the product, what will the employer do? Nothing. He is not going to give any job to anyone. So in reality, if you look at it, the employees and the employer all are part of this group called consumer group. So if there is no consumer, it doesn't matter what the employer does. It's a pointless product that he's producing. Nobody is going to buy it, which means the job is actually created by the consumers. And consumers, if you look at the consumer group, who are what percentage of consumer groups are actually employees and workers versus the owners / employers? I mean, I'm taking this rough sketch, but if you look at it, employer versus employee, the employees are many-fold when compared to the employer. So which means this whole consumer group is composed of vast percentage, disproportionately large percentage of employees, not employer. So the real job creator is the consumer, not the employer. Employer is just the, if you look at this picture, he's just the middleman. Since the consumer is buying, he is producing. He is producing because these guys are working, obviously. And by working, getting the wages from him, they are becoming part of the consumer group and buying the product from this employer or a different employer. Doesn't matter. If I work for biscuit factory, I don't need to go and buy biscuits. Maybe I'll buy some other product. But if you look at the group, employees group, this is just one organization. You take the next organization, they will have a lot of employees. These employees or the workers are disproportionately part of the consumer group, which means the consumers are the actual job creators. So the whole notion that these employers are somehow job creators, if you give more money to these guys, somehow they start creating more jobs and they start employing more people, is a myth and a blatant lie. Every employer more or less knows this. If an employer does not know, he's a fool. But vast majority of the industry already knows this well. Still they repeat this myth that we are the job creators, we are the givers, you are the takers, so you have to be grateful to me. No, fuck you. You're not the job creator. I am the job creator. Being a consumer, I am the job creator. Right now we are under COVID lockdown. The consumer base has gone down significantly. Are employers paying their employees? Vast majority of Indian and foreign companies are not paying a nickel to their employees. Why? Not because the employer can create jobs, because there are no consumers. We are not consuming. We stopped consuming. So there is no consumer, which means he is not even paying the salary to the employees. And when people say employer is taking so much risk, what risk did he take now? The real risk is passed on to the employees. They are not getting paid. They are not even being fed. They don't have money to buy most basic things. That is the state employees are in right now. So employees already take serious amount of risk when the consumer stops buying, not just the employer. So this notion that employers deserves a large share of the profit is again a lie. Obvious lie. If not a lie, it is a huge misdirection. Sure, employer does invest some money. Yeah. So if he invests the money and there is no market, if there is no consumer, sure, he's going to face a lot of he's going to go bankrupt. But in reality, the employees, they don't know when the employer will fire him. But still they're going and taking risk from their end. Now they are the whole COVID impact is fully on the employees more than the employers. Employers, he already invested the money, and the government is telling, okay boss, you need not pay the interest right now. So all the loans that he took broadly, he need not pay temporarily, he need not pay the interest. What about the employees? Nothing. They are left with nothing. So that's the lie of employee being the giver. Once that job giver and taker, I claim that I am the job giver and you are the job taker, you always naturally form the hierarchy. I am above, you are below me. You have to be grateful to me. That's the lie. So the employer has to be grateful to the consumers, who are all the employees, not the other way around. Because if you look at the picture, that's what the reality is. Okay, with that thing, let me show you how. Let's look at, so assuming that this consumer group is made up of both the employers and employees, because employer also will go and buy milk for his house. He will also go and buy one car. Say employees will go and buy bikes, and some of them will buy cars, doesn't matter. But all of them part of the consumer group. Let's look at what percentage of, suppose I get 100 rupees as employer and you get 100 rupees as employee. What percentage of your income are you going to spend being a consumer? what percentage of that you are going to save for yourself? Let's look at that structure. So this is the pyramid thing that we have right now. This is universally true across the whole world. I don't have any numbers here. There is a reason why that is the case, because I don't have the numbers with me. But this one is a well-known proposition across the world. Everyone knows it. Yeah, this is not even disputed. Suppose you take this pyramid. Yeah, so this pyramid is composed of all the various sections of the society. So you have at the top, you have the rich folks, a small bureaucratic / white collar job holders at the second tier, a large chunk of middle class in between, and even bigger chunk of poor at the bottom. Okay. Suppose all of them get 100 rupees for what it is worth. Meaning a poor man will, if poor man gets 100 rupees, the rich man will make 1 crore. Okay. So that's the reality in India. Not just in India, across the world. The rich people who are so-called employers are wealth creators, meaning there is this other term called they create wealth. The wealth is actually created by the consumers. Because if consumer is not there, employer can't do anything. Employer is perpetually dependent on employees to the work, and also he is dependent on employees to go and buy the product so that he makes money. So the employer is the sophisticated middleman who is taking money from the employees and also giving money to the employee. He is the middleman. So the real job creator or wealth creator is the employee, not the employer, never the employer. These are small tiny minority who proclaim that they are so-called job creators and screw the rest of the society with that lie. Okay. Going back to this, so you have an employee who is getting paid 100 rupees and the employer who is getting paid 1 crore. And what percentage of the poor man's salary is he going to spend in the market? Meaning, is he going to consume? He is going to consume not just for 100 rupees, he is going to borrow money for the next month's salary as collateral and buy product right now. So which means he is spending more than 100% of his income to buy products. So out of this consumer group that we have, the lowest paid people, those who get 100 rupees to 500 rupees, they are going to consume a lot more. So which means these people usually are in debt. They are the real employers, meaning they are consuming the highest, but they are always in desperate poverty all the time. And middle class spends most of it, will have very little to save. Probably over a course of their lifetime, they might be able to save to buy a small house in a remote village or a small town, never in cities, rarely in cities. So the upper middle class, the white collar employees, so they have substantial savings. They can buy houses, real estate. They can afford everything broadly, healthcare, everything. So guys at the bottom of the pyramid, middle class and the poor, they literally can't afford anything serious. By serious, I mean even healthcare. They can't even afford serious healthcare disaster in the family. If any of them get seriously sick, they more or less have to give up on that person. So you have a small group of people who spend substantially less portion of their savings, and they can afford luxuries and everything else. And the rich, the tiny rich, they can spend, they have crores with them, but how many bikes can he buy? How many cars can he buy? How many houses can he buy for himself? He can't do a lot. So the only people that can actually spend are the guys at the bottom most. So you have a small group of people who are not spending a serious proportion of their income, but they claim that they are the job creators, which is a kind of complete inversion of reality. So that's the reason why I call these guys who currently call themselves employers a bunch of liars. And if you look at it, The middle class and the poor form a large percentage of consumer base who actually go and consume. They go and spend the money that they get, which means they are the real employers. There is one additional point that I had to talk about. That is this. There is an inverse relationship in our society between the actual work done and the actual money made by those people. So here I created a simple, a rough outline. Yeah, this is an universally accepted paradigm. So you have in the red, I highlighted the red part of these pyramids, highlight the capitalist / industrial class, and the yellow one represent upper middle class, and the blue lower middle, and the poor the green. So you have three pyramids here. In the first pyramid, the amount of work done by the poorest is the highest. So the poor are so many, they go and do all the drudgery in the society. They exhaust themselves more than anyone else in the hierarchy. They do the highest amount of work. And the middle class, lower middle class does a serious amount of work. The upper middle class does very little work. And the capitalist class rarely works. Rarely, if at all. Let's look at the expenditure though. Since capitalist / industrialist / rich folk take vast chunk of their sums, they not only spend on their regular expenditure, as in the amount of money they spend on their fuel to travel, commute from house to office, or on their food. Along with that, they spend on their luxuries. They buy some villa, or they buy some yacht. Yeah, so they do whatever they want to do. But if you look at the overall expenditure, the poor, despite getting paid least amount of money for the work that they do, since the number of such people are so high, their expenditure is significantly high when compared to the rich, because the rich can't buy. What else can he buy? He already gets crores. How many milk packets can he buy? How many utensils can he buy? How much of food items can he buy? Yeah, how much groceries can he buy? All of these things. So he can't buy a lot. So the people that can buy a lot are the middle class and the poor. And they do spend serious percentage of their income. So the overall expenditure, the second pyramid lists that, where the rich again does not spend as much. The upper middle class does not spend as much. Middle class, lower middle class, and poor spends the highest. But if you look at the final pyramid, the amount of actual money made by all of these classes, the rich make the highest portion of the money, despite doing the least amount of work. So if you go from left to right, the rich does least amount of work, spends very little, but makes the highest money. The poor does the highest amount of work in the society, all the drudgery, spends the highest, and makes absolutely no money. This is a rotten society. This is a clear indication of a rotten society. The amount of work that you do has no relationship with the money made. When this is the reality, you know you are living in a rotten society. You know you are being controlled by crooks. And despite this being the equation, the capitalists and the rich industrialists proclaim that they are the rest of the society has to be grateful to them because they are creating jobs, so-called jobs. And now you know, having seen the earlier picture where the real job creator is not the employer, not the capitalist, not the industrialist. The real job creator is the consumer. And the consumer is composed of the poor and the lower middle class by and large. Okay, so with that background in mind, let's now move on to the consequences. Suppose once a society believes in the lie that these guys are job creators, job givers, or wealth creators, yeah, the middlemen or the employers proclaim themselves to be the job creators, what kind of entitlements, what kind of consequences will that kind of thought process have on the rest of the society? That's what we are going to take a look at now. Okay, before we proceed further, we are going to take a case study. Not case study, we are going to take a look at what happened recently in Karnataka. Okay, before we look at that, I will show you some bureaucratic hierarchy in every state. This is a rough outline of bureaucracy in every state. So you have a government composed of chief minister, group of ministers. So a government is nothing but a group of ministers, and the chief among them is called chief minister. And you have various departments within the government, and each of the department will have one minister. Sometimes the same minister will take care of multiple departments, but for simplicity's sake, let us make this assumption that every department has one minister, which is a sane way of doing things, but okay. So you have a bunch of ministers, one per department, and all of them report to chief minister because he is the chief among them. The decision has to be collectively made, but in reality, that's in theory that the decision has to be collectively made, but in reality, the chief minister calls all the shots. Okay, so that's a reality. So the chief minister has somebody called chief secretary, whose responsibility is to keep all the secrets. That's the reason why he's called secretary. Yeah, it's a secret. He keeps secrets. That's the idea behind secretary. So, and each department has somebody called principal secretary, and he directly reports to the minister, corresponding minister. And each of all these principal secretaries, you have one principal secretary per department, and you have one minister per department, and each principal secretary reports to their own minister, corresponding minister. And all the principal secretaries report to chief secretary. So he is their boss. So all the minister reports to chief minister, so that's their boss. So with this background in mind, let's take a look at what happened in Karnataka. Okay, so this is what happened in Karnataka. Even before we look at what happened in Karnataka, I'll give a quick background. India has been under lockdown since, let me look at the timeline. Okay, this is the timeline. On 24th March, 23rd or 24th March of 2020, Government of India imposed a nationwide lockdown, meaning nobody can go out, nobody can come in. You can't even come onto the street. So that's a kind of draconian lockdown that the Government of India imposed. Okay, we'll not be talking about the draconian lockdown. Probably in a different video we'll look at it, but as of now, it's completely outside the topic. On 29th, about 5 days later, central government issued a notice to all states. We'll take a look at this notice. So the notice, the important bit in that notice that is relevant to this current video is the central government told that every employer needs to make sure that during this lockdown period, he makes sure that he pays his employees as if the industry is operating right now. Though the employer is not making any money, the central government of India made a notification saying all the employers, all the industrialists, any business owners, all of them needs to make their salary payments despite not having any business. So that's the notification issued by central government to all the states. And then we will take a look at whether it is reasonable or not, whether that order of forcing employers to pay, whether it is legal or not is one aspect. Looks like it is legal. The central government has the power to coerce the businesses to make the payments. Okay, so that exists. The second one is, we are not talking about morality of it, whether it is moral or not, whether it is fair or not. No, we are only talking about whether it is legal. It is legal. We'll take a look at one article which talks about that. I'll just show you the snippets. I'll just read from the snippets. Okay, under what law central government is allowed to do that, and so on. And we will also take a look at whether it is fair or not for the central government to issue this notification. On 13th April, roughly 15 days later, Karnataka government, specifically the labor department within Karnataka government, labor departments deals with the workers specifically. They deal with the issues of relationship between the employers and employees. So if the employers try to screw the employees, it is the responsibility of labor department to enforce the laws to make sure that the employer does not screw the employee. Okay, like employer cannot hire child labor. So if some employer thinks that I can hire a kid and pay him 10 rupees, 100 rupees per day, he can't do that. Our employer can say, okay, there is a risky job there, but I'll not give you protective equipment. You go and do it. It will cost me to actually give you protective equipment. I'm not going to even give you that protective equipment. You go and kill yourself. If you do it, yeah, you do it. Otherwise, if you die, yeah, who cares? Sort of thing. It is better to not invest in that rather than once in a time risk to your life. So this is a common occurrence across the whole world, not just India, across the whole world. Okay, so labor department's job is to enforce laws that govern safety, worker safety, both economic and physical safety. And then on an unknown date after 13th, as soon as labor department issued the notification, the industry wrote a complaint. To whom? So on 13th April, the labor department's principal secretary issued a notice to all the employers saying, you have to make sure that you follow central government guidelines and make sure that you pay all your employees, because this is the law. And as soon as the Karnataka Labor Department's principal secretary, like I said, each department has one principal secretary. A secretary might be shared across departments also, but let us not worry about it right now. But let us make a simple assumption that, okay, one principal secretary, one department, for simplicity's sake. So the Labor Department Principal Secretary issues the notification on 13th. On an unknown date in the future, the industry writes a complaint to Chief Secretary, his boss. Let me quickly show you the hierarchy. So Labor Department Principal Secretary issues a notification and industry goes and complains to Chief Secretary, his boss. And the Chief Secretary on his own withdraws notice. And we have currently no idea when this happened, but it happened. The reason why we know all of these things is the industry group wrote a complaint letter in the future, which we'll go into in depth, saying, boss, we went and complained to Chief Secretary and he obliged us. Meaning, we told Chief Secretary we are not going to pay we are not going to follow the law. And the Chief Secretary said, good, no problem. We'll remove the order itself. Okay. So Chief Secretary withdraws the notification without anybody knowing. Only industry knows that it is withdrawn. But then on 6th May, roughly a month later, 20 days to a month later, Labor Department Principal Secretary, Labor Department opens a portal in the benefit of workers. And Labor Department says, okay, you have this portal. If you're an employee and you are not paid by your employer, he is not following the law. He is supposed to pay you. If somebody has not paid you, you please come and raise a complaint here. We will go and issue legal notices to those companies on why you are not following the law. That is on 6th May. 2 days later, on 8th, Karnataka Employers Association, meaning this is a group of employers, the so-called job creators, writes a letter to the Chief Minister saying, boss, your Labor Department is encouraging or is trying to create issue, trying to create friction between the employers and employees. You have to take care of that man, the Labor Department's Principal Secretary. 8th May is Friday. On 11th May is, let me just show you 8th May is Friday, 11th May is Monday. On 11th May, immediately, so over the weekend, when no offices kind of works, so the very next working day, the man is immediately removed from that position. I recently got to know that he is assigned to some animal husbandry department, some department which is kind of punishment role. Okay, the principal secretary, and immediately the complaint portal is removed. Okay, so this is the timeline. The reason why I gave the earlier background of why, when somebody believes that these guys are job creators, or wealth creators, or job providers / givers, yeah, a lot of these can be justified morally, even. Forget about legality. Morally is even higher standard than legal. So let's go over the documents, and this is what we are going to do. We are going to take a look at the documents from the central government. So this, the notice central government issued on 29th, we'll take a look at that, and we are going to take a look at the letter written by KEA. So this letter is actually a gold mine of entitlement. Gold mine of, once people perceive that they are better than the rest of the society, or they are doing a favor to the rest of the society is not giving favor. The customers who are buying his product are not doing him favor. He is doing favor to the customers. Okay, so when people have that twisted notion of them being the so-called job creators, what kind of absurd things can be justified morally? That's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at multiple documents. Okay, okay, so this one is on 29th May, Ministry of Home Affairs, which is part of the central government, issued a notification. So that is their order, and we are going to take a look at that specific aspect that applies to the workers. And then this is a letter that is written by Karnataka Employers Association to the Chief Minister. We are going to go over each statement in the document, and I made some notes. I highlighted some parts of the document so that we can focus on them. And finally, KEA writes a letter on 8th of May, and on 11th of May, the secretary is removed. A different secretary is installed. Okay, so let's look at MHA order, Ministry of Home Affairs, on 29th May. So this is the important aspect. I'll read this statement from that order. All employers, be it the industry or in the shops and commercial establishments, shall make payment of wages to their workers at their workplaces on the due date without any deduction for the period their establishments are under closure during the lockdown. Okay, so broadly, pay your workers during this lockdown, and that's the order. Whether it is legal or not, we'll take a look at. Later on, we'll look at whether it's moral or not. Yeah, morally justified or not. So I made some highlights. So there's a frequently asked question section in this website. So whether the employer is liable to pay, that's a question 1, and he's just quoting from the order, which means the employer is obliged to pay. And people are asking, okay, another frequently asked question is whether the order issued by the government of India is a binding direction or just an advisory. If binding, under which legal provision? So these guys say it is actually under some section 10(2)(1) of Disaster Management Act 2015. The central government has the provision to issue this order. So which means the employers must pay their employees whether the work is happening or not during this lockdown period. And before we proceed further, I just want to show you what is the role of Labor Department. So this is the government of Karnataka's website, Labor Department's website. They say their job is to maintain smooth industrial relationship with labor welfare activities. So maintain the relationship with the industry, but make sure that you maintain labor welfare activities. Specifically, if you look at this part, labor department has multiple field departments. It seems one of the responsibility of the labor department, one of the field department, is implementation of various labor laws, labor acts, working conditions and industrial relationship, and implementation of welfare measures. So okay, there are so many ants. The idea is there are a bunch of labor acts with respect to working conditions and their payment. Quite a lot of aspects are covered there with respect to labor workers. Labor meaning worker. Most of the people, whether they are working in a factory or they're working in software, they're working, doesn't matter the industry, we have some protections. So the labor department has to ensure that the employer follows those rules. So you have a principal secretary per department, and he reports to Minister of Labor. He advises Minister of Labor broadly, or he executes the instructions of Ministry of Labor. And we have another department. So you have one department whose responsibility is to take care of the needs of labor and facilitate the communication broadly between the workers and the industry. And I see no good reason why the government needs to do that job. Government's job should be only to enforce the law, not facilitation. Let the workers negotiate with let the employer negotiate with the workers. We don't need government come in between and rig the game in favor of employers, which is what happens most of the time. Yeah. Okay, so you have another department called Department of Industries and Commerce. The responsibility of this is to give sufficient incentives to the industries so that they kind of operate with sufficient capital, and give some incentives so that say they invest more in renewables versus dirty fuels and so on. So you have another department whose whole goal is to look after the kind of interests of industry. So there is a different department for that. Okay, so you have one worker department whose responsibility is to make sure that the workers are fully protected. The other department is to give sufficient incentives to the industry so that they kind of do what they need to do. Yeah. Okay, with that background, let's take a look at the letters. So on 29th March, central government issued notice. On 8th, the Karnataka Employers Association wrote a letter addressed to Chief Minister. So these are kind of documents. Okay, this is the letter that they wrote to the government of Karnataka, specifically to the Chief Minister, addressed to the Chief Minister. I converted that to PDF and made some notes. We are going to go over this document. This document, like I said, is a gold mine of entitlement. Okay, so this is the letter of Karnataka Employers Association dated 8th May to the Chief Minister, Government of Karnataka, Bangalore. Subject: repeated instances of high-handed actions of the Labor Department tarnishing the harmonious relationship between employers and employees in Karnataka. So the subject is the Labor Department enforcing the law, enforcing the order issued by the central government under some legal provision is equivalent to Labor Department tarnishing the relationship. Enforcing the law is destroying the relationship between employers and employees, because as you know, all the employees don't want to get paid during this lockdown period. It sounds absurd, right? No, that doesn't sound absurd in their worldview. In the employer's worldview, Labor Department enforcing the law is equivalent to destroying the relationship. Okay, next. With great regret, oh, okay, interesting. We would like to bring to your kind notice the following. Point number 1. On 13th April 2020, A circular with some number was issued by Manivannan, Labour Secretary, with an order to employers not to cut salaries and not to remove the employees, including temporary employees. The circular concluded with a threat that failure shall attract initiation of proceedings under the Disaster Management Act 2005. A helpline was also sought to be set up within 48 hours. Down what that statement is. So Manivannan is the principal labor secretary of Karnataka. So that's the background. And he is trying to enforce the law. And him enforcing the law is equivalent to a threat. So the employers don't want to have any rules. They want to have this to be a jungle Raj. You have a law. Oh, why would I follow a law? Don't issue me threats. So that's the attitude that they start from. Yeah. So you have your silly law. Why would I care? So that's what they are implying in point number 1. Point number 2. Alarmed by this shocking circular, industry associations, including KEA, submitted memorandums to the Chief Secretary, whose timely intervention resulted in withdrawal of the above said circular. So, the industry associations, including KEA, went to the Chief Secretary, like going back to the hierarchy. Principal Labor Secretary issued a notice saying, boss, all the employers in Karnataka needs to follow the law. If you don't follow the law, legal action would be initiated against you. And the industry went to the Chief Secretary and told him, okay, we got a notice, we got a so-called threat, meaning we don't want to follow the law. If you don't follow the law, the Labor Secretary is telling he's going to enforce the law. We don't want that to happen, so they go to his boss, Chief Secretary, and tell him, boss, we are not going to follow the law. Chief Secretary obliges. He withdraws the circular. Excellent. Point number 3. 6th May 2020, there is a tweet widely being circulated in the social media that quotes Labor Secretary stating that the directions have been issued by the Labor Minister to issue notices to the employers who have not paid the salary or paid reduced wages to the workers for the month of April 2020. So on 6th May, the Labor Secretary on social media told the Labor Minister, his boss, asked him to issue notices to all the employers who have not paid the salary, meaning enforce the law. That's what the Labor Minister has told the Labor Secretary. That point number 4, the tweet further says, if you're affected worker, you can go to this website link, dasoha2020.com, and file your complaint. Okay, so fine, not a big deal. So the labor department is doing their best to make sure that the people are following the law. If somebody is not following the law, the aggrieved party can actually go and complain to the government in a reasonable way. Point number 5. It is further noted that the Labor Secretary has been actively encouraging workers to register their complaints regarding non-payment of wages or retrenchment, with an assurance that strict action will be taken against employers. Encouraged by this open call, more than 700 workmen have reportedly registered their complaints in the website. Okay, the important bits are Labor Secretary, whose job is to make sure that he implements the law, not just in paper, but in reality. So Labor Secretary told, okay, if you are an employee and you are not paid by your employer, you please come here and file complaints. That is equivalent to him actively encouraging workers. Yeah, of course, he's expected to do that job. That is his job. What else can you say? And encouraged by this open call. So Labor Secretary is not supposed to enforce the law. He is not expected to facilitate the workers who are aggrieved party. No, he is supposed to silently deny them any right to actually go and approach. I think that's the mindset that these guys are coming from. And that is number 5. Number 6, it is submitted that when a concerned employer tweeted that since he has absolutely no means to pay the salary to his workmen due to the lockdown, the labor secretary responded immediately by stating that business is your domain, sir. Implementing law is my domain. Let us do each of our work. That's the dharma. Okay. So the interesting bit is this. This is where we're going to take a look at the fairness aspect of it. Central government issued a notification saying, all the employers, you pay your employees, whether you are making money or not. So it is possible that a small fraction of employers, not a large, a small fraction of employers will not be able to afford that. These are small businesses, might not be able to afford that. Ideally, the central government, since they impose this cruel lockdown, they are supposed to inject money into the society. It will cause slight inflation, but we are talking about an emergency, health emergency here, and the central government, it is the central government's job to make sure that all the employees, all the citizens of this country can feed themselves during this lockdown, this cruel lockdown. That's what its job is. Instead of them doing their job, they are telling all the employees, you go and pay to all the employees. That's a kind of unfair. Yeah. At least that's a valid point to make. Okay. So when one of the employers asked this secretary over Twitter, I believe, saying, I don't have any money to pay my employees, what can I do? The secretary told, okay boss, I can't handle your business. Business is business, and I can only enforce the law. This is my job. But there is an interesting bit that we need to take a look at right now. These employers talk about them not being able to afford to pay the employees now during the lockdown because they are not making money. Fair point. Okay, I do think that that's a fair point. But the thing that they don't tell you is this. When the economy was normal, they pay the least amount of taxes. They go and bribe all the politicians and write laws such that they pay no taxes. They hire the highest paid chartered accountants, accounting firms, to make sure that they pay barely any taxes. Despite them making the most of the money. They don't talk about that during the normal cycle. No, that should not be talked about. And the other one is, they systematically pay the employees so low. The employees do the highest amount of work. They get paid nothing. They get literally paid nothing for the value they produce. So the employee is producing the product. He is the consumer who is going and ultimately consuming the product. But when he is working, he gets paid the lowest. When he is purchasing the same product, he is paying the highest money for the same product. And the guy, the intermediate, the middleman, is making all the killing. So these two aspects they don't talk about at all. But now they ate all the profit during the normal period. Now for a small, tiny period, if they are asked to pay a kind of the bare minimum, kind of the salary that they're going to pay for 1 or 2 months is not going to impact them seriously in any way. Even for fairness sake, say they don't need to pay because the government is supposed to pay this. The government currently is so unaccountable. Nobody cares. The government is so beyond the pale of anybody, any rational being right now. Okay. Point number 7. It is our humble submission that the dharma of employers is to create wealth for the benefit of the nation. Oh, okay. Wow. And that is why they are called Udyogadata and Annadata. Okay. So in this twisted world where up is down, these guys, so the so-called employers, their dharma, I don't know what dharma means, whatever that is, yeah, their job, I suppose, I don't know, is to create wealth for the nation. Oh, Are they creating wealth for themselves, or they are creating for the nation, so-called nobody, abstract nobody? They are doing the least amount of work. The employees are putting all the work. The employees are going and buying the product in the market that they have produced. The employees have produced the product and they are buying the product in the market, and they form the largest percentage of consumer base. Somehow the employers make all the money, and they make a claim that they are creating wealth for the benefit of the nation. Who is creating? The consumer is creating the wealth, if at all somebody is creating it. The consumer is the employee, because employees form large part of consumer group, and they see themselves as, meaning this in twisted world, udyoga data, job giver, donor kind of. Data is usually, at least from the place where I come from, is kind of donor. He is kind of a generous man who is giving employment. Annadata, he also gives food to people. The consumer is not giving food in this twisted world. These employers who is not paying their own employees right now and not following the law is all of these things, Udyogadata and Annadata, and employees are so happy they are not paying. They are approaching the labor department, and the labor department, by wanting to enforce the law, is creating the friction, breaking the harmonious relationship between employer and employee. You look at the twisted world that these guys are, they created for themselves, and the twisted conclusions that they come to. Okay, point number 8. It is submitted that when no work has taken place during the lockdown period, the hands of the employers have been tight, and therefore they have been unable to run their businesses and produce wealth. In such a situation, it is a dharma of the government, particularly the labor department, to instill confidence among the employers and build rapport between the employers and employees, so as to find practical solutions to the issue of payment of wages during the lockdown period. So the important bits are producing wealth. So because of lockdown, they are not able to produce wealth, it seems. Because of lockdown, consumers are not there. Since consumers are not there, it doesn't matter even if they produce, they can't do anything. It is pointless. Okay? So if at all there is somebody who is producing the wealth, meaning I am repeating this point 100 times so that it sinks in. Employers are never the producers of wealth. Consumers are the producers of wealth. Okay? And the labor department's responsibility is not to enforce the labor laws. Rather, in this twisted world, labor department's responsibility is to instill confidence in the workers who lost everything due to the lockdown. No, not them. The labor department's responsibility is not that. Instead, go the other way around. Labor department has to instill the confidence into the employer's mind. What about that other departments? Ministry of Commerce and Industry? No, that department's job is already that. But we want the labor department, which is the watchdog, to make sure that the employees are never exploited. Now, in these guys' world, labor department's job is exactly same as Ministry of Commerce and this one. Meaning the kind of twisted world that we are living in, these guys live in. And use that, the original conception that they are the job creators, as a starting position. This is the twisted world that they can knit. And their labor department's job is building the rapport between the employers and employees. I'm sure employees are so happy that they're going to labor department and complaining, because who would not want to? If your employer says I am not going to pay you, I'm sure all of us would be happy. We will not have any questions. We'll be so happy that we'll go home. We don't complain to anybody. But in this twisted world, so that's what labor department is supposed to do. Just go to the employers and tell them, console them that okay, no, everything will be all right. Yeah, don't worry, you don't need to pay your employees. Be happy. So as to find practical solutions. By practical solutions, he means don't enforce the law. That's what is practical. Don't enforce the law. Don't make sure that the employees get paid what they're supposed to get paid. No, that don't do it. Point number 9. It is regrettable that instead of playing the role of amicable facilitator and bring about understanding and consensus between employers and employees during this difficult period, the Labor Department has been provoking and instigating the workmen to lodge complaints against their own annadatas, so called, thereby vitiating the entire atmosphere of harmonious relationship that always existed in Karnataka. Wow, you look at the kind of inversion that these guys, the kind of twisted world they live in. So Labor Department's responsibility is not to enforce labor laws. No, their job is now, the industry is redefining what labor department needs to do now. They have to facilitate consensus and understanding between employers and employees. Wow. Why should they do that? Why should the Labor Department do that? They need to do that because that is the twisted world from which industry is operating from. Labor Department's job is to enforce the labor laws, not to appease the employers, not to build consensus. Yeah, employees can negotiate with the employer. They can do that very well. Yeah, employees are all adults, and employers are also adults. So when two adults are discussing, yeah, there's a fair negotiation that has to happen. But no, here the Labor Department, by wanting to enforce the law, is provoking and instigating. Okay. Enforcing law now has two meanings. One is, previously, where was that? Threat. Enforcing law is a threat. Second one, it is instigation, provocation and instigation, wanting to enforce law. And then vitiating the harmonious relationship. So there is already a harmonious relationship between employees and employers. Employees are so happy not to get paid that they're going and complaining to the Labor Department. But the relationship is so good that Labor Department is breaking it now. Point number 10. It is submitted that the above said precipitative actions of the Labor Department and the incautious actions of Labor Secretary, much against this dharma that is expected from a civil servant, has damaged the fabric of trust so assiduously built up over a long period in the state of Karnataka. Dharma is also means right behavior and respect for social order that ought to not be disturbed without understanding the cause. It's a matter of pride that Karnataka, among all southern states, welcomes people from all over India with open arms, and our actions have always conveyed our ethos. While Prime Minister calls himself as Pradhan Sevak, the spirit of Seva should imbibe our actions and including actions of the bureaucracy. Unbiased treatment by all in the bureaucracy is a legitimate expectation of both employers and employees. That is the dharma of bureaucrats. Okay. Multiple things. I did not know what precipitative action is. Looks like it is a careless action, broadly. Okay, fine. And careless and incautious. Okay, fine. Yeah, both are same. Damage the fabric of trust so assiduously. Okay, so the relationship between employers and employees is so, meaning he's repeating the same shit again and again and again. Yeah. Dharma is also right behavior and respect for social order that ought not to be disturbed. What is this so-called dharma and the right behavior and the respect for social order that ought not to be disturbed? That is not enforcing the law, not working on the side of workers. The Labor Department, from our perspective, from the industry perspective, should work for us, not for the workers, not for the labor. Meaning the name Labor Department comes from labor. Okay. Labor Department should not think that it is for the labor. It is for us. It is supposed to come onto our side and appease us. And all of these are incautious actions. Enforcing law, incautious. So-called Pradhan Sevak, yeah, he calls himself Pradhan Sevak, yeah, the man who spends thousands of crores on taxpayer money is so-called sevak. Yeah, okay. And he is actually, yeah, he's a sevak. He is doing seva by spending all our money and giving, taking the complete onto whole country onto a lockdown and not feeding people, ensuring that people die of starvation. All of those things. People walk home and die while they go home. So all of these are sevas. Okay, sure. I'm sure you are also, as the industry is also as sevak as them. So they are giving lecture to the labor department on what they are supposed to do. Yeah. Unbiased treatment of the bureaucracy. Unbiased, what do you mean unbiased? Labor department is supposed to enforce labor laws. What is unbiased? Unbiased meaning you have to come onto my side, man, then you're not biased. So, point number 11. In view of all that is said above, we are pained to request that immediate steps are taken to change the leadership in the labor department, which in these difficult times has to play the role of an umbilical cord that connects the employers and employees rather than be an impediment to the harmonious relationship which is a need of the hour. Specifically, please get rid of that secretary. He is enforcing the law. We don't want the law to be enforced. We want the so-called harmonious relationship where we win all the time, the employees lose all the time. So that's a harmonious relationship we build over the course of years in Karnataka. We don't want that to be broken. And there is a umbilical cord. So there is a motherly and child. So the employer is the so-called giver and the child, the employee, is the taker. There is an umbilical cord that connects both of them. No, it's not a fair deal or some kind of deal between the employers and employees. You work for me, I'll give you some money. No, that is not the relationship. Here we are talking about motherly relationship. The industry is the so great. The child has to be grateful to the mother. That's the kind of bullshit world that these guys come from. Okay. So labor department, by enforcing the law, is breaking all of that and thanking you, whatever. Yeah. So that's the letter. So this letter is written on 8th May. And what happened then? So this is the letter this is the order from Government of Karnataka. Let's read the, I'll go over the letter. A notification dated 11th May, which is on Monday. They complained on Friday. This man is removed from that position on 11th Monday. Maheshwar Rao, Principal Secretary to the Commerce and Industries Department, is placed in concurrent charge for the post of Principal Secretary to the Department of Labor as well, with immediate effect. And until further orders, Captain Manivannan is transferred. There are other things, but it is not that important. So the thing is, immediately on Monday, Government of Karnataka installs the PR department, the kind of public relationship department called Commerce and Industries Development Department. Now that guy is not only going to appease industry there, which is his job. Now he will come here and take care of the labor department also, which is the exact opposite one. So that secretary, Maheshwar Rao, is now supposed to take care of both of these things, meaning now you don't have two departments, you have a single department that only works for one side, the industry, the employer, never for the employee. And Captain Manivannan is the IAS officer. He's transferred immediately. So this shows, let's go back to the starting point, the outline. When there is no relationship between the hard work that somebody puts in and the reward that they makes, you know you are living in a rotten society. Point number 1. Point number 2. Once the so-called job creators lies, the lie of job creators is widely spread, they can come up with any absurd reasoning to simply say that, boss, you have to appease me. I am the employer. I am the so-called job creator. You have to appease me, not the worker. You can come in with that. When your starting position is wrong, your conclusions will always be wrong. And the industry now is telling, I am the so-called Vidyoga Data. I am the donor. When people are called donors, if I work for you and you pay me, you are not donating anything to me. It's an exchange. I am giving this, you are giving me that. Donation is things beyond that. I kind of say, you donate, I am a poor man, and you donate few things to me. You're not expecting anything in return from me. That is actually donation. But these guys see themselves as they are donating the jobs. They are donating the food also. I don't know what that is, but okay. By giving the job, they are donating the food also, I believe. From that money, you'll go and buy food. So that means they are donating even food. I'm sure they must be donating everything else as well. Your house also, they must be donating by that ad stick. Yeah. And they never talk about the lobbying that they do for taxes and so-called incentives that they get for the industry, everything else, and the terrible wages that they pay to employees. No, none of them they talk about. They would never want anybody to focus on those aspects. And they so-called they are not creating wealth for themselves. They are creating wealth for the whole nation, it seems. That's the biggest joke of all. And Labor Department should instead work on one side, not even mediator. Okay, I wrote it as wrongly. It should work on the side of employer by not enforcing the law. Don't enforce the law. If you want me to, suppose the industry can say, I am hiring a child labor. Why are you not facilitating mediation between me and my worker? Why don't you act as a mediator between us? Why are you enforcing the law? Please come and let us talk about how I can hire this child labor and pay him 100 rupees or 50 rupees per day. That's the kind of twisted mindset these guys operate from, because their starting position is twisted to begin with. Unless we recognize these lies for what they are, unless we counter this propaganda from these vested interests, we will never have a fair society. And goodbye.